Well, Mary Shelley was the kind of product of an extraordinary background, really. I mean, her father, William Godwin, is an atheist. I mean, an atheist at that point, you know, the late 18th century, early 19th century, is an offence against nature. Her mother is a complete feminist. You know, she is the progenitor of all feminists. So really, whatever happens to this child is going to be extraordinary.
What Britain is dealing with in 1816 is the aftermath of war, what happens when you demobilise an army, when your munitions factories have to stop, when you are trying to work out how to move from an economy which has essentially been agricultural to one which is going to become industrial. And industrial unrest is a real feature of the period in which Mary is writing.
Because it's a time when people are becoming detached from the natural world by the Industrial Revolution. It's the dynamic behind what she's writing about. And it is the meeting of the industrial and the scientific with the romantic. That's what creates the spark that is Frankenstein. Shelley is a vile person back in England. You know, he's a man who, like Byron, is suspected of incest, certainly of, you know, carrying away a young girl.
Meeting Shelley is tremendously liberating, and it is the great event of her early life, obviously, but it crystallises her separation from her family and for her separation from her father in particular. The reason that Mary Shelley arrives in Geneva in 1816 is to do with her complicated family. She is brought up alongside a stepsister called Claire Clairmont. When Mary and Shelley elope in 1814 to France, they take Claire with them. It becomes increasingly tense with the three of them, and Claire decides at some point in the early spring of 1816 that she is bored of being the third wheel in Shelley and Mary's relationship, and that she's going to acquire a poet of her own. And so she throws herself at Byron, who is the most famous poet of the day. Claire therefore decides that she and Shelley and Mary should follow Byron to Europe, and that they should follow him to Geneva.
The book, Frankenstein, is written in an extraordinary period historically, but also geographically. There's a great appeal of Europe, but specifically Switzerland, as this new republic, the land of William Tell and of Rousseau too. So they go to Geneva and they set up home on the edge of Lake Geneva and the Villa Diodati, which is where Milton had stayed. You know, and Milton, of course, Paradise Lost is a key influence on Frankenstein. But they set up this kind of commune.
It's where the famous events of the summer take place. It's where, because Byron is there as a magnet, other people congregate.
And they are like rock stars. I mean, Byron is a man who walks around with a condom in his pocket, you know. There are people hiring telescopes on the other side of the lake so people can spy on the wickedness that's going on there.
Byron seems to suggest that everyone should write a ghost story. This suggestion that they should all write a ghost story causes something of panic in her, because everyone else gets going and she can't think of one, and every morning she's asked to think of one and she has to say that she can't. Until one night she has what she describes as a waking dream in which she sees a vision of her novel comes to her in a kind of hallucinatory state, and then she is able to emerge downstairs the next morning and announce that she had thought of a story. You have the sense, reading accounts of it being extremely intense. Thunderstorms echo around the lake. In Europe, in fact, experiences one of its worst summers ever. Crops fell all over Europe. There's huge unrest as a result. And what that means for Mary is that she is sitting watching Lake Geneva as lightning and thunder echoes around the mountains and around the lake. So it's tremendously dramatic.
The sheer sort of frenzied, almost drug-like state that they work themselves up into. I mean, Frankenstein is really born out of a hyper-tense state.
Later, when they leave Geneva and they return to Bath to live for the winter, and Mary starts to write the novel in earnest, terrible events happen. Mary, by this point, has given birth to a child. She has also lost a child. She has lost her mother. She has come to terms with being the daughter of a woman who is a social outcast.
She has become so caught up in what she's writing. I mean, she really does enter a different zone in this book. All these things are caught up in this one tragic, pathetic, innocent, ugly, beautiful creature.
it is suggesting that creation need not be divinely inspired. So you can't write something much more shocking than that in 1818.
It's completely heretical. I mean, you might as well have gone up to the Archbishop of Canterbury and slapped him in the face, which is what this book does, really, in a way.
The novel was originally published anonymously in 1818. It's not particularly unusual at that stage for novels to appear anonymously. People often talk about the fact that she's very young when she writes it, 18, 19. I think that's one of the reasons it has the quality it has, because it is very much a novel written by someone who is still in the process of working out what they think about the world. News of its authorship does gradually leak out, and it is reissued in 1831, so several years after the first publication and after Shelley has died. And this preface, written for the 1831 edition, situate the work as the novel of someone who is much younger, of someone whose life has passed, because by this point it's crucially important for Mary to rehabilitate her reputation so that she can earn a living for herself and for her child. And that's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand it means that she has a reputation and she is able to build a literary career for herself. On the other, you can never quite escape having been the author of Frankenstein.